Hi, I'm Daniel Gold, and this is the Gold Standard Leadership Lab. By day, I'm a partner at a top advisory firm using my training as an attorney to help my clients succeed. This podcast, though, is my personal project, completely separate and apart from my day job, yet fueled by the same passion that drives me in everything I do, teaching and mentoring. My goal is to share straightforward lessons and practical takeaways that you can put into action to help fuel your leadership journey. Thanks for joining me here in the Leadership Lab. Before we dive in, I need to ask you for something. If this content hits you the way I think it will, here's how you can help us grow. Head over to goldstandardleadershiplab.com and subscribe. Better yet, become a paid member of the GSL Lab. You'll get exclusive content that doesn't go anywhere else. You can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Here's why this matters. Your subscription literally fuels everything we do here. It helps us create better content, dive deeper into these topics, and this is the exciting part, it's going to help us bring some incredible guests onto this show very soon. The bigger this community gets, the better the conversations become. So if you're in, let's build this together. I was thinking about this a lot recently. Tactics without an objective is like throwing darts in the dark. You might hit a bullseye once, but it's only going to be by accident. Picture this scene with me for a moment. It's Monday morning. Leadership meeting happens. The CFO walks in and proposes a hiring freeze. The CMO raises her hand, wants to double down on digital marketing. HR is pushing a new performance management system. Then comes the COO, who insists that all managers must undergo Lean Six Sigma training. See what's happening here? Everyone's advocating for their initiative with conviction backed by their own data and passion. But then someone asks the simple question: what exactly is our actual objective here? And the room goes quiet. And after an uncomfortable pause, vague phrases emerge. You've heard all of them. Well, it's operational excellence. I think it's growth. Digital transformation. This scene plays out in conference rooms everywhere. We've confused activity with achievement. We have confused motion with progress. So let's talk about what the real problem is here. Too often, leaders are flooding calendars with initiatives. Here's what we do. We roll out programs. We cut costs. We hire people. We launch campaigns, all believing that action somehow is going to equal transformation and therefore revenue. However, when tactics exist without structure, they become random motion rather than having any sort of meaningful impact. And then what happens? Well, resources evaporate, teams burn out, chasing conflicting priorities. Organizations spin their wheels while competitors with clarity, they're racing ahead. You may recall where we first explored this theme. It was in episode 21. We discussed metrics that mislead and examined how chasing numbers without purpose can distort priorities. In episode 24, why consistency is leadership's most underrated skill, we discussed how consistency is the heartbeat of trust, and how showing up reliably becomes leadership currency that earns credibility and influence. But here's what we did not address. Consistency toward what end? You can be consistently executing tactics that don't serve any coherent strategy. You can be reliably busy without being meaningfully productive. There is such a big difference. And this builds out that foundation to offer something much more fundamental. We're not here to stack more tactics on an overwhelming plate. We're here to align systems inside and out so that leadership becomes something beyond what you do. It becomes how you are. So let's talk about, no pun intended, but the golden sequence. Golden sequence requires system-based thinking. And so system thinking demands a very specific order. So the order I want to talk to you about is objectives, strategies, and tactics. The objective asks a very important question. What outcome or state are you aiming for? What is it that you want to really do? Then comes the strategy. Okay, so now we have the objective. So now what sustainable plan gets you there? Okay, so what sustainable plan gets you there? And then comes the tactics. So what are the particular actions that support the plan? So what we've just talked about so far are lots of people doing a lot of tactics that have no strategy, that don't back into any objective. And what happens is when you reverse this order, you go tactics, strategy, objective, you have chaos. And many leaders, unbeknownst to them, are beginning with tactics. They haven't really solved the problem in asking the real big question, which is what exactly is our objective here? So a lot of leaders come up with tactics like, let's create a lunch and learn session. Let's create a marketing campaign. Let's do a reorganization because that will solve things. Let's have a hiring spree. Let's have a hiring freeze. Let's have a riff. Without a clear objective, those actions scatter like seeds on concrete. So let me give you an actual example. A company spends millions of dollars on agile transformation training. That's the tactic, right? Millions of dollars, transformation training. But they never defined what problems agile would actually solve, because that's the objective. They never figured out how it fit into their product development approach for the thing, the widget that they made, because that's the strategy. What that company will inevitably find is that 6 months later, is that teams were using agile terminology, right? That's good. But they were still working in the same manner as before, which is clearly bad. Only now there's more meetings and more frustration. And of course, you've got the training vendor that the company hired, and they say, well, success. Why? Well, because we've completed all of the trainings that we said we were going to complete. What the organization really got was expensive theater. Because why? Because there was no objective. And with no objective, there was no strategy. There was just a tactic. So let's talk about the cost of getting it wrong. When you start with the tactics, here's what happens. Initiative fatigue as teams juggle disconnected programs. You have resource drain with no measurable return. You have conflicting priorities that paralyze decision-making, cynicism as employees recognize motion without meeting. You have lost market positions as focused competitors. They're outmaneuvering you. But here's what misalignment really costs. Trust. It erodes trust. When employees see leadership shifting from one initiative then to another and no clear reasoning, they lose faith in their leaders. They smile at meetings and nod at announcements, then return to their desks to wait for yet another transformation. And the best talent, those with options, they leave for organizations that have clarity. The rest stay, but they're disengaged, becoming expensive placeholders. That's not what anyone wants. And that's not fair to anyone. Misalignment destroys market position. So while you're juggling tactics, competitors with aligned systems, right? Objectives, strategy, tactics, they're moving with purpose. They're faster, not because they work harder, but because the dead weight of conflicting initiatives is lifted from them. What really happens here is misalignment exhausts leaders too. When everything is urgent and nothing connects, leaders burn out. Trying to hold it all together through sheer will, they become the integration point for a system that should be self-organizing. They become the strategy because there isn't one. So look, I want to address the skeptic in the room here, because the skeptic in the room might say, well, Daniel, we need to move fast. And I agree, right? But, and you might even go on and say, markets won't wait for perfect alignment. Sometimes you just have to act, and I'll say true. But consider this for a moment. Taking 20 minutes to clarify what exactly is the objective and strategy before launching a tactic, that isn't slowing down. It's preventing the 3-month retrofit when you realize you're solving the wrong problem. It's avoiding the 6-month unwinding when initiatives conflict. And it's preventing the 1-year restart when nothing you have done has produced a result. Speed without direction isn't speed at all. It's just velocity towards some, unknown destination. So let's shift gears now and talk about how to get our minds wrapped around objectives, strategies, and tactics. And we're going to start in a very unexpected place. Your morning ritual. That's right. Here's where this gets practical and it's going to get personal. So what is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? Because if it's grabbing your phone and checking your email, I'm going to tell you right now, you've got it all wrong. Your morning ritual isn't some sort of productivity hack or a wellness trend. It is a microsystem that models what you want your organization's systems to be personally and professionally. So let's walk through this a little bit. If that is the case, right? That's the thesis, the hypothetical here, that we want our organizational systems, personal and professional, to align to be the same, then the objective, right? The objective for our morning ritual, our morning routine, should begin each day in a state of grounded alignment. Mind, body, spirit are integrated so that every decision flows from clarity rather than reactivity. Stay with me. Don't think this is some sort of new age foo-foo, okay? Here's the strategy part. The strategy is that there's 5 pillars to achieving this objective. Stillness, reflection, learning, activation, and movement. Each one of those pillars supports the other, and it creates a complete system rather than isolated practices. Okay, so we have our objective, we have our strategy. Now what are our tactics? So those tactics might be, I want to do a 10-minute meditation or a 5-minute breathing exercise. I want to journal gratitude. I want to read. I want to do strategic hydration and supplements. I want to run or I want to weight lift. Those are all various different tactics to support this idea that our strategy has 5 pillars, right? Stillness, reflection, learning, activation, and movement. These aren't random wellness activities. They are specific actions serving a defined strategy toward a very, very clear objective. This is putting a system into place that starts with how you wake up and approach every day. And the reason why I bring this very, very specific example up is because you're practicing at the personal level what you'll want to execute at the organizational level. Aligned actions from a very, very clear purpose. You take this model and then apply the objectives, strategies, and tactics all throughout your workday. This is system optimization much more so than it is self-improvement. The shift from execution to embodiment looks something like this, right? Instead of managing your calendar, now what you're going to do is look at your calendar and you are the architect of your own time. Instead of responding to emails or requests, you are acting first on your priorities. And instead of just pushing initiatives, you pull people toward a clear vision that's grounded in those objectives. You know you made this shift when your team stops asking what, and they start understanding the why. When initiatives feel connected rather than competing, you know you have won the day. When Monday morning meetings begin with objective clarification rather than tactical debates, like we started this episode with, you've mastered this golden sequence. So here's a final challenge I have for you. I want you to choose one initiative you're currently leading, and I'd like you to map it out thoroughly. I want you to really think about what exactly is my objective, because if you can't state that in one clear sentence, I don't really think you have one. Then ask, what is the strategy? If this is just a list of tactics, you don't have a strategy. And then finally, what are your tactics? If these could support any strategy at all, then they are not aligned with the strategy and not aligned with the objective. I'd like you to also try what we just talked about in mapping your morning ritual through the same lens. Because again, the discipline that you develop at the personal level becomes the clarity you bring to the organizational level. And if you lead yourself like you lead your systems, with intention rather than impulse, with strategy rather than tactics, and with purpose rather than motion, you are leading not just yourself, but you are also leading your team. Your next tactic doesn't matter nearly as much as the objective it serves and the strategy that it supports. If you get the sequence right, and tactics become truly powerful. If you get wrong, they become truly expensive distractions. The choice, as always, is yours. However, you now have the framework and the protocols to make much more informed choices. And remember, leadership isn't about perfection. It is about progress. Take this lesson, put it into action, and continue setting the gold standard in your own life and at work. See you all next time.